Party Animal Quilting. I'm Debbie Brown. In the first series of episodes, I am going to be quilting a test for this quilt in progress on the design wall behind me. I started piecing this quilt based on two things that I saw when I was in Kansas City at Quilt Market a few years ago. The first thing I saw was the shower curtain in my Airbnb. It had a cross pattern and it had some dots on it. It didn't look like this at all, but it's what started me quilting. I saw the shower curtain like, oh, this would make a great quilt. So here it is. Also, while I was at Quilt Market, I saw a great quilt by Primitive Gatherings, and it was navy blue wool with cream. The kit is still available. You should totally buy it. It's absolutely gorgeous. So I took that color inspiration and I started making these blocks. Most of these blocks are done by hand, and since I put so much work into this quilt, I wanted to make sure that a hand-pieced border and a hand-appliqued border was going to look right on the quilt before I put all of that work into it. So I made a single block and put a border on two sides of it so that I have the border in the corner. What I'm quilting on my Friday nights is the test piece for this quilt. So I've tested the piecing of it, the applique on it, and I like that. Now I'm testing the quilting of it. So follow along and watch step by step as I do. I've appliqued a vine, and typically on vines, I use those as the center of a feather. I use those as the spine for my feather. But I don't want to do feathers on this. So what I want to do is do ribbon candy on either side. Now I have double batted this quilt. It has a layer of cotton and a layer of wool. The loft of the two battings typically helps the quilting to show, but it doesn't work as well on dark fabrics as it does on light fabrics, because the quilting that shows is the difference in the heights and the shadows that are created. There aren't that many shadows that are able to be seen on this navy blue fabric. So I've chosen a contrasting thread color. It is a gray blue brown, which I think is perfect for this quilt. I'm going to quilt ribbon candy 1 inch from the spine. And I did a very high-tech way of drawing the 1 inch. I just started making marks with my ruler and a chalk pencil. So I'm stitching ribbon candy from left to right, and what I'm going to do is keep the ribbon candy perpendicular to the spine rather than parallel to each other, parallel to the edges of the quilt. So it will have a little bit of an undulation going. I am setting my speed of my machine a little over half speed. I'm going to press my foot pedal all the way to the ground and start quilting. Now what I've noticed is with the double batting is that my foot is dragging a little bit because the quilt's thicker than it normally is. So I have a scroll bar that can raise the height of my foot. There we go. And I actually want to raise that a little bit more because I'm feeling a little bit of resistance whenever I get next to the vine, since it's appliqued in multi-layers, so I have seam allowance under there as well. Whenever I stop, I typically stop on one of the lines, either the bottom line or the top line, which is a chalk line here. So I'm resting there as I'm repositioning my hands, and I'm making sure that I'm not pulling the fabric one way or another. I don't want to have obvious starts and stops. Now I haven't stitched in the ditch along the vine, and the reason is the ribbon candy stitches close to the vine, and it's going to act as the stitch in the ditch. So it's going to push the fabric down on the blue fabric and let the green pop up a little bit. So it'll actually give me a little bit of loft in the vine. Now, when I'm going around this corner, and I've worked hard in my head, I worked many times trying to figure out what this corner was going to look like. I'm going to keep the ribbon candy perpendicular, so it's going to be skinnier at the bottom and fatter at the top. And now I can work my way down the other side. Since this is my test piece and it's little, it's less than 30 inches, I'm just going to turn it and quilt up and down this way. I'm actually getting really excited. I love the way this is turning out. And that's why I'm doing a test, because I don't want to not be excited at the way the real quilt is turning out. And I'm just going to stitch off into the batting and cut my threads. I was a little nervous about the thread color, because the only way this is going to show on the navy, this ribbon candy is going to show on the navy blue fabric, is with a contrasting color. But I didn't want to do something really crazy, like lime green, because I think a little lime green is enough on here. I didn't want a navy blue because it would disappear. I didn't want a brown because it would be a total contrast. So this is a blue-gray brown, which I think is working quite well. Now what I'm going to do is do ribbon candy on the other side of the vine. Now what gets difficult here, and I have to figure out how to do this, is I have this really tall area right here, and I want to kind of, I don't want to have ribbon candy going all the way up here, just because it's going to look dorky. It's going to be really tall. So I think I'm going to curve it like I curved up here, and then maybe later come in and fill this in with other quilting, because I want to continue that stitch in the ditch effect so that the blue is all quilted down and the green is all popped up. I'm done. I'm really happy with how this looks. Mostly happy. I would love to get the corners a little better here, going around the top here and going around this point. So I think I'm going to leave them for here and try to improve them whenever I do my large quilt. I'm going to be doing some small, fine background quilting around the circles, and I like to separate the ribbon candy from that. So what I'm going to do is echo around it using this same thread. I'm going to use the edge of the foot as for distance. So I am going to kind of run the edge of my foot along the tops of the ribbon candy. I'm going to stitch a bunch of little curves. Now that I'm at the corner again with this little quilt, I'll turn, and I would probably turn with a large quilt too. I like to quilt up and down and have most of the quilt on the outside of the sewing machine. And just stitch off the end of the quilt. And now I'm going to do the same echoing on the other side of the other row of ribbon candy. Let me cut this tail. And the last thing I'm going to do is do the echoing that takes all of the stitching up into the point of my applique vine stem. So let me start here. So I need a longer tail, which I just cut with the machine, so I need to leave a longer tail. Pull up and leave that long tail. I'll hand tie that and bury it later. Bring my needle down. So what I'm trying to do is to draw all of my lines down so that it ends up being stitch in the ditch in there. And now I'm going to make a knot here by hand, so I'll leave long tails and tie those later. So I have a long bobbin, a long top thread. So I'm pretty pleased with that. Now I have it marked to do another row of ribbon candy here. But what I'm deciding is I don't want to do it in the contrasting thread color. I think I'm going to do that in a navy blue, so it blends in here, but is still the ribbon candy. So it's like strong ribbon candy, lighter ribbon candy. I got out 2 shades of navy blue thread, and this one is a little too gray. I think I'm going to go with this brighter one. Well, let's pull out the thread and not just the spool and see. Yep, I'm going to go with the brighter one. Every thread that I use, I'm putting aside so that I will use the exact same thing when I quilt the real quilt. Oh, I will come back up to the top here. I'm going to do ribbon candy 1 inch away, 1 inch of ribbon candy 1 inch away from the circles. really happy with that. Now I'm going to come up and do more echoing. And I'm back up top. So I have my feather replacement ribbon candy. I have a little echoed ribbon candy, kind of a shadow here. And I think I need to do one more row on the outside. Darken that original line. And let me repeat that on the other side. Again, those chalk marks will wear off in a short amount of time. That's what the quilt looks like so far. I think I like it. I'm never really sure at this point, but that's what I have. I will take some time to think and plan and decide what to do next. Quilt along with me in 2021. I've designed 12 different scrap quilts and will offer them free, one each month for all of 2021. Since machine quilting is my passion, I'm including machine quilting instruction in each month's lesson. Subscribe to my newsletter at debbybrownquilts.com to be sure you find out all of the details.